call the meeting of the December 14th, 2011 meeting of the Urban Forestry Advisory Board to order. And let's see, we're a little bit behind schedule, so I just wanted to call it to keep us on schedule is what I'm saying, because we have maybe kind of a full agenda. I don't know how many of you have your agendas with you, but I can kind of tell you what we have on it. The first thing is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, October 12th. Did anybody get a chance to read those and determine whether or not those are accurate, if there's anything that needs to be said about them?
Wouldn't our last meeting have been November rather than October?
Our last meeting was November. We'll report on that later. But the last one we have minutes for is October 12th.
Okay.
So, did anybody get a chance to see that?
I read it, and I move that we accept it as written.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Okay, those, I read them too, and they look fine as far as I can remember, so. And the next thing, I am remiss on, native plant presentation by me. And I have everything here but the picture, and my mother, I had to take her to the emergency room this afternoon to the hospital. Nothing wrong with her whatsoever, but she thought there might be something wrong with her. I have to report, so I meant to get the picture made at Kinko's, a color photocopy to use to recommend the plant that I wanted to recommend. But if you don't mind, I'll save that till our next meeting because, just because we have plenty to do here today anyway, even so. So sorry about that. I'll do it next time. I guess we'll decide who does it the next time kind of thing, how we've been doing it, kind of. And now we're down to subcommittee reports. The first committee report that we have on the agenda is the public education and outreach. And that is, the only thing we're really doing on that, I suppose, is we're doing an invasive species and native plant education project ongoing, mainly invasive species, and we haven't done anything more on that. I think we'll have a new member coming next year that will help us cooperate. Maybe Don Steinkraus may join us next year.
Good.
He said he was faxing his application in yesterday, and I don't know if it's actually happened or not. But if it has, then he'll be a good person to help us with that because he already has a nice PowerPoint on that same subject. We can work on that together, some of us. Does anybody else have anything to say about public education and outreach at this time?
Well, just that we're going to meet tomorrow and try to rework a little bit of that brochure.
That's right.
So it can be put online.
The invasive species brochure. Cindy helped get it published and written, and Dr. Steinkraus did too. And they're going to meet with Alice and read a little bit of wording changes so that we can put it online for others to read.
Okay.
Now, down to something that will be a little more meat to it. The tree farm information that we have among us. Betty arranged that we went our last meeting to a tree farm examples out at the University of Arkansas. And you want to kind of summarize what we learned there or what we saw? Can you do that?
Basically, it's a part of a watershed. At least one of the parts that we saw was part of a watershed to where the plants, the trees and things that would be protect the stream from so much erosion. Mm-hmm. And the trees that we saw in that area were probably about, I think they were planted about 2 years old, and I think when we saw them, they probably were about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years old at the most. And some of the trees on one side were planted in containers, and the trees on the other were just planted as saplings. And we saw from that there wasn't a great difference between the two planting types. And what we're concerned with in the city is that if we plant street trees, they should be about a 2-inch caliper in order to be planted. And the ones, after we saw those trees in that area, we drove over down close to where the fairgrounds were and run parallel to 540, and that's actually where a new part of the trail system is for the city of Fayetteville. And those trees had been planted about 10 or 11 years ago, and they were much larger and being 11 years old, and they probably would be past the point that would be feasible to plant for the city. And we had a forester, somebody from the Forestry Commission there, and someone also from Little Rock, from the Extension Service, that was pretty much the forestry person from there. And then we had people from the university farm, from the Extension University, I should say agricultural experiment station there. And so we had three or four people that were very knowledgeable on this subject. And basically, it seemed unfeasible to plant trees in containers, because those containers, well, one thing, they could fall over. Another thing is that once you have them in containers, you would have to be sure they're watered very well, because they could dry out. Plants could freeze easier in the containers than they could in the ground. So the most feasible thing for planting trees would be to plant them about when they're about 2 years old or so, and plant them in the ground. And then after, when they reach a certain caliber, then the city has, what would you call it, Alice? It's kind of
A spade, tree spade?
it's a spade.
Is that what you-
So they would have a big spade that could take the tree out and transport it to the actual place of planting. But one thing that we have to consider is that we have to be sure we have enough volunteer people that would take care of these trees and water them for at least 2 or 3 years very, very carefully. And trees also would need pest control and various other types of pruning and stuff if there are branches that are dead or dying from winter storms or from droughts. We need to be very careful with the trees. So there has to be a set number of volunteers that would come out and be sure to actually take care of those trees and not have a break in taking care of them. And one of the concerns I have is, since our group is not, it's not stable as far as people, committee members coming in and out. Some people are on the committee for 2 or 3 years, and then another group of people will come in. So we have to be sure the people that are in our advisory board will some way pass along that stability of taking care of those trees. And so that's, the main thing that I can say about where we were, what we did. And I know that the other people that were here, that were Lacey and Nancy and Allison and yes, so yeah, so we have a lot of people here that were at that particular place that could have their inputs too.
I wanted to say that Fru Gallagher, the camera person that was there, she volunteered her time, I believe, to come to that meeting. No, she was paid anyway. But anyway, she did make us DVDs of that tree tour, and those men were very, very knowledgeable and very helpful. We learned a lot in a short period of time that day. And I took one copy to the library to be checked out, but anybody in here that hasn't been going the tour and is interested in learning what we learned is welcome to take this home with them. And James Gibson, by the way, made a tree plan for us, and he emailed it, a plan about how to start a tree farm. That's what we asked him to do. And he emailed it to everybody. Did everybody get a chance to look at that? I have one here somewhere, but I don't know. I think we kind of are maybe back to square one a little bit with our tree farm, aren't we? We don't really have anybody that's taking ready to take leadership to make it happen and find the volunteers and make the structure and so on. I wonder if there's anybody else that would like to say anything about our tree farm concerns.
Oh, there was one thing that I was assuming that the Forestry Commission would have various trees available, but it seems like they had, they may not have all the species that we would like to plant, some of the natives and things like that. So we would have to find an outside source for those trees. And also from the Forestry Commission, the trees would be just very small saplings. They would not be a 2-gallon container. So there are various things we have to take under consideration as far as where are we going to get the trees. And I know we want to stick with more with our native trees, and so there's so many different areas that we need to study before obviously we can make a decision to have the tree farm.
Anybody want to say something on this subject to us? There's someone in the audience, Tom DeRica, that might explain a little bit who you are and what you're up
Thank
to.
you. Nancy, my name's Tom DeRica. My wife Ann and I moved to Fayetteville 2 years ago after 25 years in Central Texas. I very briefly, in the last 10 years, I co-founded and ran a 4-county land trust in Central Texas, east of Austin. One of the most successful projects we did was a tree planting guide for the 4-county region down there. Rather simple compared to the high production values of some of the ones that I've seen in Arkansas. But there's also there's a lack of investment opportunities. We don't really want to be landlords on rental houses, but the fact that a tree farm that might supply native species in this area is of interest to us. There's nothing closer than Little Rock or Mountain Home or Harrison or somewhere up there. But
Pine
Probably
Ridge.
Missouri has some.
well,
London.
They have seedlings.
Arkansas,
Yeah.
but the possibility of growing 2-inch caliber trees, that we're ready to pull out of the ground and put into even city sidewalk plantings is something that was of interest to us. So
You mean a personal project or a
yes, this
for-profit
is a
project?
for-profit. Yes, correct. Although we would certainly probably use it as an educational tool for
Whoever.
folks that were interested in trying to learn about natives and how to propagate them. So that's
Yeah, I forgot before we even talked to him, there's one other thing that Lois learned, and she put me on to talking to somebody about this subject too. You went on a ride down to Little Rock with somebody, Bernie.
Bernie Kurz, the extension agent, and Gloria McIntosh, who works the greenhouse at Wilson Park. And they would like to come and speak about their experiences with tree farms.
Well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
At the Christmas party, the Master Gardener Christmas party, I talked to Bernie about it afterwards, and he didn't actually want to come speak. He wants us to contact the city of Little Rock and ask them their experience, that they apparently tried to start a tree farm, and they had volunteers, and they had one going, and somehow it fell through the cracks. The trees died with volunteers, and that he said he wouldn't advise a non-for-profit, or especially an advisory board to try to start a tree farm. But, I bet we could find around in the country other examples of people who have, so I don't say that's the exact answer that we shouldn't try. I'm just reporting that that's what he wanted us to know, was that he didn't think it was a good idea.
Gloria, when we had our tree giveaway, Gloria, those extra trees that were in the back, she worked on those. She took care of those trees, and she would like to come and tell you what was actually involved and how hard it was.
To keep the trees going. And,
Right. And so, we have to be practical about the whole thing, and so I think that we need to know all this.
Yes, we do.
Well, and those were relatively small trees. They were certainly not 2-inch caliber trees. And we might be better suited to trying to raise those trees, if anything, to give away than the 2-inch caliber. Because that's a lot of time.
This time and quality control, that kind of thing. And so I guess when Tom, he mentioned to me that he and Ann might want to start a tree farm, and I was thinking if somebody would and could, if we didn't start a market for it, there is a market for them, obviously. That's the point, isn't there? They need to be here from somebody, from some source. So, I don't know if there's anything more to say on that. Anybody? You think, what should we do? Wait talk about it again, or drop the subject, or vote that we are not going to try to do it, or do you want to pursue it some more, learn more from other cities?
Well, I think we can learn more from other cities,
Okay.
so that's not ever gonna hurt to
No.
do that. And if Tom and his wife wanna do a tree farm, that's their decision.
Of course.
As a business, and,
It's unrelated, except that.
yeah,
Roll with the dice.
yeah, it is.
Okay, then, does anybody want to contact Little Rock or any other, or research if there are other cities that have had success at that? Or do you just want to table it for a while and come back to it next year? Any thoughts on that subject?
Nancy, in my case, yes, I'm going to contact the existing Arkansas native
Oh.
tree farms and find
Okay.
out their experience.
Okay.
And perhaps I'll have something to report.
Would you be willing to tell us what you learned? Is that what you're thinking?
No.
No?
Yeah,
Of course. Okay.
Of course.
That'd be so good. Okay. Shall we just hang loose till something else happens on this subject?
Yes,
From somebody?
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing will happen until after Christmas, of course.
Okay.
Oh.
New Year's.
So that will be next year.
Yeah, way into next year.
We'll wait for a report next year.
Okay. Alrighty. And then the Tree and Landscape Awards Program, remember I brought that prototype from that city for us to look at and make comments on? But I'm realizing that that is something we do not have to know immediately, and it might be something that we could devote a whole meeting to sometime if we set ourselves a goal of sitting here and going through it, and with our suggestions with a fine-tooth comb. Does that sound like what's, anybody want, did you bring, Lacey, your ideas ready for
I
tonight?
know, I was just trying to remember.
Ah,
No, don't put me on the spot. I'm trying to remember
Not like
what
me.
you're talking about.
What the heck
Like
I'm talking
October.
about?
Because that must have been October, right?
Yeah, it had to be. That was a
Yeah,
long time
sounds
ago.
right.
That's right. Do any, you remember what I'm talking about? Emily, I don't know if you were here.
Well, no, I remember talking about it in various categories of awards,
Yeah.
businesses,
Yeah.
individuals, public
That's right.
places and stuff. So it sounded like there was a lot to consider.
So, Lacey's found her copy probably.
To
Good.
read
Better than me.
this on my head, but yes. Yes.
Well, what I can do is send out, if I can find it on their website again, I might have copied it onto my own personal notes, but I send that out to us all, and do you want to set a particular meeting to do that, or just wait till January when we have our new, why don't we wait till January when we have our new people on board, whoever they might be, who know who's going to be on board, and then we can set a plan for ourselves. Does that sound like something to do on that subject? Okay. This may not be the right time to say this, but I just wanted to say that the way it looks right now, I think we only have one applicant for a vacant spot on this board. And Henry and Lacey and Betty and I think we're going to be continuing if you pass your nomination interviews.
Keep your fingers crossed for me, I don't know.
Right? And then
I could be sabotaged.
You're such a bad person.
Really. I'm gonna get thrown off.
So it'll be 5 of us for a quarter at the best, at the most of it. But during that quarter, it'll be up to week 5, and anybody else, we need to get the word out. We need to think of ways to find other people that might be interested in this subject, because I think there are people interested, they just don't know. And
One over there, right there.
see, there are. Lovely. This is going to be so good if you do that. But the city has a process. Tell us a little bit about the process, Allison.
For filling the gaps?
No, is it every quarter, every half a year? or
Every
how does-
quarter.
Well,
Yeah, they
tell us-
advertise quarterly, and Mel, you may know those dates better than I do, but
I don't.
oh, she doesn't. Anyway, there's an online application that you can fill in your application. The city clerk sends out an announcement for all of the board and committee vacancies once a quarter. And once that comes out, you can send in your application, and then they have interviews from a selection committee that's appointed by the city council.
Okay.
It's a tough interview.
And the next quarterly time is like January, February, it's sort of around March or February that you'll be
An announcement.
unannounced.
Yeah.
And on that, let's see, what else is on that subject? Darn, I forgot, I was gonna say something on this subject. No, I can't remember now. I think.
We have a new urban forester. I missed the last meeting, so.
We do,
So
Megan
where is
Dale,
she?
and she couldn't make it. She was tied up tonight, but I'm hoping to get her in the loop for these
Yeah,
starting in January.
there you go.
Speaking of January, you
And we do. She started about 6 or 8 weeks ago.
And her background?
Her background is actually landscape architecture, and we filled, I think we talked about this a little bit, but the position that we advertised is a temporary position that lasts 18 months maximum, and it was specifically for the ordinance review portion of the job until we can figure out how we're gonna handle that position, because it's a lot of work, as you guys probably recognized with Greg and previous urban foresters. It's a very heavy load for one person to do the forestry side of things and the ordinance review. So we're trying to look at that and see how we can make it a little more manageable. So that's what we're doing. But we do have her on board for now, and she's doing a great job.
Right.
I remember what else I was gonna say is that we changed our name from Tree and Landscape Advisory Committee to Urban Forestry Advisory Board. And that's one thing we've done, and I wonder if that's off-putting to people when they read in the paper that we're some kind of urban forestry. Maybe it's a technical sounding thing rather than a tree and landscape kind of soft and flowery kind of thing. And the other thing is when they advertise it, the other committees don't have slots to fill. They just get 13 people or 7 people or whatever. Our committee, they advertise that they need somebody from utilities, somebody from the university, that somebody from this, somebody from that. Then they say, oh, we have one at-large position. And so people would think, by reading that there probably aren't slots even available for the general public except for the one. So Allison's, I think, and I think the city clerk are going to do something on that Sunday.
Well, we did actually broaden slots with the
Right.
ordinance amendment, so now there are 4 at large.
Okay.
And the other specific ones are land development, representative of the tree service community, university, and that's it, and 4 at large, because we went from 9 to 7 members.
But what does it say in the last ad? It said, it may
It's-
name 3 slots and 1 at large.
Well, that's because that's what's vacant.
I know, but if people can fill those other 3 slots from at large, from the general public, can't they?
Yes.
And I don't know if anybody reading that would understand that. So I think the city clerk did agree to put that sentence in the next time she runs the ad, something about
If no
others.
applicant from a position, yeah, then,
That's great. Appreciate that.
yeah.
Okay, and then we had our celebration of trees, and I thought we might want to talk about that a little. Cindy had some suggestions, or not in general, you could say what your impression was of how did it go, and how would we do it better or worse next year? Not worse, but anybody want to say something? Not
We could
worse.
probably do it worse.
It could be done worse, but anybody got some ideas about the thoughts of, do you remember how it went and what you thought about it as it was going?
Well, my comment was, and this has been one of my pet peeves, I've been here for 5 or maybe 6 years, is that we've given away so many trees, and as we're condensing the city, there's not a lot of room for trees. And so I really think shrubs are a much better way to go. That's my only concern with being an urban forestry committee, is that we're getting away from the landscape.
But the forest comprises of the grass and the bushes, and so,
It's not necessarily viewed that way. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I mean,
people
well, I think
People would think
viburnums,
it's just, yeah.
that the shrubs were the first to go in the
Right.
last few years.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need more shrubs, because they went like that, they were gone.
I've got a question. I wasn't able to stay till the end of that, but were they all given away? Or did we end up with?
they're all given away
They were all
by
given
10:30.
away. It was one of the
10:30.
earliest years we've had recently. Yep.
I mean,
Say something.
I've been around here for a while. We used to be done by about 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah, and recently, I mean, within the past, I've probably been there the past 3 or 4 years, and it's been 12 or 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
So-
it's inching back towards how it used to be.
But I like Cindy's comment, she may not remember saying that, but that we didn't, she met people the next day that didn't know we had had that celebration of trees. We probably, personally, I know the city publicized it, but the rest of us, I didn't send much word out about it. I think a lot of organizations, we should have emailed or networked with them to let them know, because truthfully, some of us went home with more than our share of trees just because we thought nobody was coming to get the trees. And it would have been better to share them or get them out to a wider variety of people.
Well, I really think that we need to change a little bit with times. The social media is so critical these days. There's Community Link.
Yeah.
There's Facebook for Fayetteville. I'm not sure running the ads is the best use of the money. But then I'm almost gone.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. When you said that, when you told me those things, it made me realize that we really, most people probably didn't know about it unless they read the paper, and how many people read the paper or watch a cable TV? Not too many. So let's try to remind ourselves we are going to be here, if we hope to be here next year, to do some public. I mean, I was really gung-ho publicizing those little programs we did last year, but I just completely dropped the celebration of trees, and that would have been a good time to get the word out a little bit more on that subject.
Well, and I haven't checked it lately, but I think the city of Fayetteville has almost 6,000 fans, friends, whatever it is, on Facebook. And that, I think, might be a better way to get some of the information out. And then there's Community Link that Julie McQuaid does. So I just think we need to change the approach a little bit.
Yeah. Use technology and go for it.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's free.
That's a good part.
Since I'm leaving the committee anyway, I will admit that I allowed several people from Bella Vista and a couple from Springdale to get trees. And it was because, you know, at that time, it wasn't like we were just being inundated with people. I mean, there were a lot of people coming in, but there were tons of trees left, and these people had come all that way, and I felt sorry for them, so I did allow them to get the trees.
Just after a while, we did quit asking for identification, and that maybe I feel a little bit bad about that too, because it came from the Urban Forestry Fund of some sort, and it should be going into city of Fayetteville's canopy. So I thought of that after the fact too. So, well, but maybe we'll think about that next year a little bit more. So, anything else anybody wants to say about the celebration of trees event?
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
sure.
Are any of the other cities in Northwest Arkansas actually doing anything close to this?
Not that I've heard.
No.
I haven't heard of any from.
Don't think so. It'd be a good
Very
source.
unique.
A good place to sell some trees if they just started doing it.
Yeah.
A good market.
Tom, did you and Ann get any trees? Were you able to?
Yes, we got some dogwoods, and we got arrowwood viburnum, which I think is a shrub, and a flowering crab apple, which
Great.
is kind of a shrub.
Yeah.
And we planted dogwoods, and we've taken out a lot of invasives using Nancy's weed wrench. It's great fun to feel them come out of the ground. And, so anyway, it's possible.
We're down to, we have several things, other business or announcements. Anything, I have one thing, does anybody else have a thing that they want to talk? I know we're gonna get, you can be next if you don't mind after we talk about our tree things. This is a tree thing I'm gonna ask. Does anybody else have anything about our tree committee that we need to talk about? On our forestry board, forestry advisory board? Well, I wanted to ask, I told Allison I was gonna ask this, whether when someone has ailanthus trees on their property, when they're developing a lot, and the urban forester goes up there to decide if they have enough canopy or if they need to replace some of the canopy or whatever, whether an ailanthus tree counts as canopy tree. And I thought I'd ask the urban forester, but do you happen to know the answer to
I
that?
do know the answer, yep.
Okay.
And right now, yes, it could be. And kind of the process is when a development comes through, they're required to show all the canopy on their site, what they're proposing to remove and what they're proposing to keep. And if they have individual, what we call significant trees, and there's a list of those and the sizes and what determines if it's significant or not, they have to individually survey those and identify them on their plan. And in other areas where there may be a large grouping of trees, they just show an overall canopy area. So, and then they're required also to list the general health, age, and the majority of the species. So there could be some of those trees in that grouping of canopy, and it could be part of what is being counted as preserved. So they're not obviously targeted for preservation, but if there are a lot of factors that play into that, because we have trees that we consider high priority, mid priority, low priority. So if there were a grove of those trees, we might consider those low priority because they are invasive, and we would, allow those obviously to be taken out with their development.
But if you didn't allow them, would you, if the person said, I don't want to take them out, I like them, can they be forced to be taken out, or can they be allowed to keep the ailanthus tree on the property?
We can't require them to take it out, no.
What is an ailanthus tree?
Tree heaven.
Is it, yeah, the Chinese sumac? Oh, no.
An undesirable tree of some kind?
Yes, that's the bottom line.
But is it an invasive?
Extremely.
Oh, it is?
It's a very tall, it grows very fast, it's very pithy, it's like a weed inside, and it grows very tall, and it looks like a sumac, except it gets much
I
taller.
think I know it, yeah, I think I know.
And it grows in all sorts of cracks, and the thing about an ailanthus tree, if you kill one, I even saw studies on the internet about it, it actually makes, they did 100%. If you leave one where it is, it's 100% of an ailanthus tree, but if you kill it, it's like 200% of an ailanthus tree, because they came up all around their roots everywhere else. So they are impossible to get rid of. You can't, the only way you can kill them is to girdle them and put a certain poison in them. That's what the internet said, and then it's 100% kill. But generally, they are a very undesirable tree, and they spread rampantly, grow very fast, and they shade out other trees. And I was hoping, I don't know if we'll ever have any input into what trees can be considered part of the canopy, but I would hate for an ailanthus tree to be preserved as part of a canopy at someone's house. And I was wondering if that could open the issue. There may be other trees that we also wouldn't want to preserve as part of the canopy. And I don't know if our board wants to get involved in that issue or not. I do, but I'm the only one, I'm one person. Anybody else care about that?
Well, I'm on the EAC committee, and it was brought up the last meeting. They're building the Hilton Garden Inn, or they want to, over by the Holiday Inn. And they want to cut down the locusts and
Willows.
and another kind of tree, and I forget
It was
exactly.
willow.
But they want to plant 2-inch caliber trees in replacement. And I think that is something that this committee should be talking about. Once you cut down these very mature trees, you're going to lose so much in the tree canopy that will take years and years to replace. The 2-inch calipers.
And they're studded for a while from the transplant, aren't they? From what I understand, a spaded tree just sits there for quite a long time.
But I know Sarah Lewis was wanting some input from various committees on if that should be allowed to happen or not.
Huh. Would we like to have anything to say, or some sessions about, if we'd like to have some input into the codes about what trees can be considered part of the canopy, and if not, what the recourse is? Is that way to put it, Allison? Or I guess any way we want to put it.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Is that something you're interested in, or not so much?
Well, I think at this point it's so close to being approved or not
I think that particular place.
that I think if there's any input, you probably need to go to city council.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, and
I don't
that
mean that-
probably will be this next
At the
Tuesday.
December 20th.
Yeah.
I guess I don't mean that particular thing, but in general, just the rules. Just the rules could be modified or tweaked a little bit in some cases to make.
Well, one of the issues that I have is that you start allowing an exception here, then where do you draw the line down the road? So it's a little late for this group to get that involved, but something to consider for the next city council
Except it's
meeting.
not an exception now, but in the future it could be an exception. Right now, it's okay apparently for them to do that it's not an exception, is
So
it?
they're discussing it, and so it has not been totally approved, but this is a time for the citizens to get involved. I mean, it's a wetland area, they're gonna clear the trees. And while they wanna do low-impact development, that's not exactly low-impact development to cut down all those trees. But I'm a troublemaker, so.
No. That's why we're on these boards, to pay attention to things.
What if we take some of the wording in that committee and go over it and present it here? So let's see, what are they saying?
There hasn't been a final decision from that committee. We just met last week.
Okay.
But, and again, it's a very, very tight time frame
Right,
because it probably will be approved next Tuesday.
right, on that particular issue. But I meant there may be some decision or some document that the committee says, okay, this is what we would like to say. Then we could take what they say and see if that fits in our thoughts also, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we can be, there can be more than one committee with specific wording to handle the situation in the future.
As far
Instead
as
of
what's
trying to,
counted as canopy, is that what you're
Well,
talking about?
the issue that you were saying
Well,
that
I
they were
mean, yeah.
discussing.
But I think what we can do today is if you have a strong opinion, one way or the other, email city council. You can go to the clerk, city clerk, and she will send it out to all the city council and the mayor.
This can
And
be
that-
individual action, in other words.
And just individual actions.
Because we may not feel educated enough to speak as a group, for sure, on
No,
that subject.
but I meant, but not on this issue, but on
Yeah.
issues following that we can get from one committee, so various committees that have similar interest, we can see that our wording is similar in each of those committees. So we'll be all in the same, this committee, this committee, this committee, all agreed on this particular issue. But
Absolutely.
Not the
Yeah.
issue with that particular, but a generalized statement that would cover, that would, all 2 or 3 committees would all agree on that same issue.
Do you think the Environmental Action Committee is going to come to some sort of resolution on that subject, or do you think they're just gonna go on down the road?
I think for this particular property, it's too late.
Yeah.
I understand, but
Yeah.
I'm talking, she's talking in
But yeah,
general.
yeah,
Right.
I think somewhere down the road, we want to have a better resolution, but I really think it's important, and I've talked about this for a couple of years. Maybe even if we only get together once every quarter with some of these other committees
Right,
with similar issues, we're gonna have a stronger presence
right.
to go to city council and go,
Yeah.
excuse me.
These 3 committees agree on this particular
Yeah,
topic. Yeah, that's what I would think
Yeah.
would be a stronger presentation to the council, to the city council.
But actually, we are the one that's most closely focused on this subject, and maybe it should originate with us, and they would look at our wording. So that's what aren't planning to originate it, are they? There's not a discussion. Are they planning to make up some words in the future, environmental action?
it was just brought up for discussion last week.
Right.
And Sarah Lewis heads up the committee,
Mm-hmm.
and she's on city council. She asked for us individuals
Mm-hmm.
to send something to our city
Right.
council.
But I'm talking
On the
about
topic, but
in
yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
No, I
whoever drafts
absolutely
it,
agree.
then
Yeah.
just, whoever drafts it, then we can pass it
Right,
between
right.
2 or 3 committees.
So would you guys be willing to work on something like that in this committee?
It is one of the duties of this committee
I would think, we're the
Um,
advisory board for the urban
to
forestry.
review and recommend revisions to the chapter 167, which is the tree preservation.
That's what I thought, we're the logical committee to originate the wording, if there is any wording, and then have other groups that are more general look at
So
it.
would you like to do that?
Look, do what? Do look at the code and see what should be done differently? Yeah, I can do that. And think about my concerns, but you guys gotta, if you have any, you need to let me know what they are so I can watch out for them in the codes, if you want to. You know?
So maybe you can be the originator of it, and then we can pass it to the other committees.
Well, I'm not by myself, I mean,
Well,
the
I know,
committee.
but I meant for you,
to bring it to
somebody
the
needs
group.
to write it down to begin with. I
Okay.
mean, look over the code, and I guess get with Allison,
It-
and then look over that code, and then make some
She's-
starting sentence or starting paragraph.
Or
And
whatever
then
it
after
is.
that, then we could,
It might be a good idea for, I don't know what, you guys can choose a meeting, but for Megan and I just to go through the code with you guys, so you're familiar with the process and what's required and what's not. And I mean, it's one of your
Sure.
duties, but I feel like a lot of you probably aren't that familiar with the actual code.
You're
And-
right,
and-
you're always having to point things out to us after the fact, it's true.
yeah.
And, you know, unless you work with it every day, you don't.
Right.
I mean-
Yeah, we'll skim through it, but we're not
Right.
studying it. You're
So-
studying it.
if you'd
So
like
we
for
could
us to
point
do
to
that.
you to study it and help us with that particular.
Do you think we could do that in a meeting? I mean, would that take more than a meeting to do something like
It
that?
might take more than a meeting, but I think, just kind of a run through.
And then all of us, as we listen to it, it would force us to pay attention to it, and we could have this time available, and we could make little notes beside things that we want to discuss together, and then go from there maybe, would that sound like some time to devote our meeting to that?
Sure, I think so.
I move that we devote one of our meetings for Allison to present this code to us so we can understand it and make better issues and better statements on it, and also to share that with some of the Environmental Action Committee. So,
And again, I would really like to see more networking
right.
between
Yeah, absolutely.
the committees. So working on the
Absolutely.
same goal.
Yeah.
So is there a second to our motion before we discuss it anymore? Anybody else think
I'll
that's
second
okay?
that since this is
You're still
my
here.
last one.
But you can call me. if
Any
you want to.
discussion on that idea? Or does it sound, okay, everybody in favor of the idea that we do that, say aye?
Aye.
And all opposed, say nay. So we will do that. Do you want to set a time? Allison, you want to tell us when it's comfortable for you guys to do that? I mean, could it be next time or the next time?
We can do it anytime. Yep. Happy to do it whenever. If we have a light agenda next
So is January appropriate if we would have new members?
May
It might
have-
be.
It'd be appropriate. Last year, I think we kind of reviewed things in January, didn't we? It seems
I
like.
think that would be good to introduce the new members on some various, very, what do you call it? Think of the word, come on,
The
Cindy. help me.
nitty-gritty of what we.
I forgot the word.
Orientation, yeah.
Yeah, good
Orientation, yeah.
orientation for things that are important to our
Sure.
board. So yeah, that would be an excellent time to do it in January.
No problem. Should we get, in the meantime, are we gonna have copies, or you can bring us copies, or should we make copies off of something that's sent
Or
to
send it
us?
through the email.
Because we'll all want something to be able to look at while you're doing that.
Well, I'll certainly send out I can send it out ahead of time, but I will also send it out with the agenda for January, and it's all online on CityNet too. I can just send you the link to the.
Okay.
Right, and tell us, go to this code.
Sounds good.
So this is already there.
167.
Yep.
You said, yeah.
Sounds good. And that's all I really had on that subject. Is anything else, Urban Forestry Advisory Board business that we need to talk about? Then we can go on to our Firewise people.
Yes.
Tell us.
We have Sue Butler here who's going to give us a little overview of Firewise, and we talked briefly and thought that this might be a good just kind of introduction, because I think it's going to be kind of a learning process for us all as far as what is required with Firewise, and we know that we have to have 2 meetings per year, but I don't think the program is necessarily fully developed, so Sue wanted to come and just kind of talk about things that she's done in the past, and maybe we could think about how we want to handle those meetings in the future.
Thank you. Well, my name is Sue Butler, and I'm with the Fayetteville Fire Marshal's Office, which is part of the fire department. I'm the Fire and Life Safety Specialist, which actually means I do public education and all the other stuff that goes along. The Firewise program that I've never had to really deal with it, other than my boss, Terry Lawson, who just retired, used to handle it. And basically what Firewise is to protect, without destroying any of the forest or woods or anything that are located, but to make a separation from houses to forest, so that in the event that there is a forest fire, that your houses will be saved a little longer. I mean, it might happen that they get on fire, but there's ways to avoid that. And that's what Firewise is, Arkansas Firewise is. From the gentlemen's from Little Rock came up that were part of the Firewise location. They work with the Forestry, you probably know some of the people. But they had, this is kind of what they give out, these little brochures, and real good information. They have a web page too that I've gotten information from. So our last project it's actually not a fire department project, it's actually a community involvement project. Fire department is just there because it says fire in it, and we can teach about the protection that they can do, steps that they can do. The last project we did was with my boss, Chief Lawson, and what they did was they had bags that they, leaf bags that they provided to the public to put your leaves in, and then we had a special event where we came by. I believe at the time it was solid waste because we didn't have urban forestry, but they came by and made a special effort to pick up door to, everybody's on a certain day, a Saturday or something, and we were able to pick up all these leaves that were in the bag, and that helped a lot. Got rid of so because the whole idea of Firewise is not to burn unnecessarily. Okay, we don't want to burn, and because that what can cause fires. Okay? So this was our last project, and it was just a pamphlet, and you got bags. You could come and get these bags at any of the fire stations and throughout, Fayetteville. Now, this last, I was kind of instructed to come here, and so I don't know all what Greg had done, and I understand that he tried to get it where there's a committee that we can start this. This last summer, which was very, very dry, as you well know, we had a couple fires that were caused by, one was a tractor that was way off from the property that actually burned. And it was so dry, and the wind picked up and took one little spark and dropped it in the middle of this field. And it was in a location, it was nothing in the field, so all the houses were protected, but it just was like that. I mean, that quick. The field was covered. So I was thinking, man, I gotta do something. And I normally do fire safety in the home, inside the home, inside buildings, stuff like that. This was an outside project, so I got together with our code compliance division, which is Chad Ball as a director, and got with him, and we designed, and the reason I got with him because they are out of property all the time, and they enforce unsightly and unsanitary conditions on property in Fayetteville. So I thought, okay, here we go. This is a way to maybe for them, if they're there, they can hand out this little pamphlet and introduce. We're not asking, we don't want, this is a city that loves trees, which is a wonderful thing. You don't see that. So, they look at us like, well, you're making us cut down. No, that's not what I'm saying. So I made a little brochure that's kind of a seasonal thing. And I made a couple copies to pass around. I didn't know who was coming, what was here and stuff. So there's a couple things that you can look at. And it needs some tweaking, but it was something we could pass out right away. Can I give you one on here? You guys could you might have to share it, because I didn't know how many. No, it's just that simple part. I had to make these real quick. Here, I can share there we go. Okay. Here I got it. And we went to the newspaper. We got it out through the newspaper. We got it out in the City Biz. We got it out in the. We had an interview that came, and what it was is a seasonal thing that you can actually. That on the front it kind of says some suggestions, of course, because we can't really enforce these things. This is all about taking steps to protect your property, and they're simple things. And then on the other side was just kind of like different pictures and stuff, and what to have ready. And we called it the Urban Fire Safety Project, which because of urban is such a nice catchy little phrase there, and it is a fire safety project. That's how we took it. So Chad and I got together and we kind of designed this, and we were passing this out, but then of course our funds ran out,
Yeah.
So what we were trying to do, like every beginning of every season, is remind people of this, and then make a special effort to, like, with the, let's say spring's coming up, is put out a little more information that we couldn't, these are general, that we could emphasize, okay, this is what you should be coming up with now. And So in that sense, that is a way of a fire-wise kind of project. But excuse me for not knowing what to come here with, because I've not been, I didn't know if you guys already had this going. So, you know, and I'm sorry if I interrupted your meeting or anything, or, you know, I thought it would be great to have you as a backup too, because this is what you do, you know, and we want to save the trees, we want to save the houses. So there's little steps that they can do, and you guys probably even know all this, you know. And it's actually supposed to be a nicer copy. These I had to do, you know, my printer, but, and they're closed. So what it was a harder piece of paper, and we were able to pass them out. And see, the code compliance officers are out in the field. They're right there. So during these, you know, 4 seasons, we could start, you know, taking them out and stuff like that. So this was a I thought maybe an idea like this that we can do. I mean, as a project, if you guys want to do it, if that's what we're all about. So that's what I had, and I thought it was, and I'm always up for doing more, because I have to educate the people, the citizens, about fire safety anyway. Outdoor is just as important, especially in their own little backyard. They can keep the fire from going, you know, to their house. A lot of people think it's only in the house. It's as much outside too. And this last summer, oh my goodness, there was compost piles that were burning up. You know, well, you know, when you churn them and stuff, and boom, you know, just crazy things that we're not, you know, with the extreme heat that we had. So it's kind of like, hey, this is something you can do right here in your own backyard. And not cut anything out, but just maybe trim, not cut. Trim. But you know, this was just something that, and Chad was, I wasn't able to tell him about the meeting in time, so he said it was okay to put his name out there. Chad and I worked together many years ago, so that's how I know him, and that's how I know what he does.
Are you saying this has already been taken out, or you're suggesting that it goes out with Chad?
No, he is also the person.
He's already doing it, right?
Yeah, we were doing it, we started it last August,
Okay.
but I ran out of funds by October, because I was putting them out everywhere I could. And then October is my very busy month. It's fire prevention month, so that's where I am. And so it kind of ran over into November, and this week is actually the first week that it's been like, wow, I could clean up my desk. You know, there's all these piles. And I do have a brown desk, I found out. It's brown. That's why they got here. But it's just been crazy that way. But I'm willing to do anything you guys need to do, that you want to do, if you want to be part of this, if this is something you want to take on.
I think we're obligated by the code now that we have to have 2 meetings a year that are related fire-wise, and we probably should have adjourned this meeting and started the meeting when we heard from you just now.
Well,
But
this was just an informational, I think
Right.
we'll start that in 2012.
Yeah,
When we
and
kind of get a game
so
plan.
you know where I'm at, who I am, and you know,
Yes.
kind of what, and I wanted some feedback too, because I don't know if this is what you guys are looking for either, you know, if this is the kind of.
I think we'll, oh, go ahead.
I just want to make one comment. I'm a full-time volunteer. I worked at the schools quite a bit to be litter-free zone schools. One of the major issues that we have that I'd like you and your group to address, EAC is talking about it, but the university, you cannot smoke on the university campus. It's a $100 fine. What the students are doing is walking across the street to Leverett Elementary School, and they smoke at Leverett Elementary and throw their cigarette butts out there. And I really think there needs to be some teeth into, the school district has said no smoking on campus, but there's nothing, no teeth to enforce it. And I know police are too busy to always enforce it, but just the threat of getting a $100 ticket, that's a lot of your money. My kids just graduated, I know.
It's discouraging to hear that they're going to the elementary school,
Yeah.
but I mean, just so you know, They're doing it right on campus. I'm walking to the library and there's somebody right
Yep.
up there. Because nobody cares. It's not enforced like you're saying.
Yep.
So, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And that's funny because there's no smoking allowed on school
On school
campuses,
property.
on
Right,
public
right.
school campuses.
Within so many feet.
No guns,
But-
no smoking, no alcohol, no
But there's
drugs.
not a way to enforce it.
Right,
There's no
right.
teeth.
I'll have to
There's a
investigate on that
wonderful
one.
butterfly bench that was made by, I think it was Eugene Sargent, to memorialize an 8-year-old girl who was killed by the
Mhm.
Tyson complex. And kids are sitting on there, students and college students, and smoking. They can pick up 400 cigarette butts from one location.
I can investigate on that. That's, you know, I do the school inspections. So I know some of the maintenance people over there that we walk with that have to maintain the grounds and stuff
Well,
like
and
that.
it's the kids. The kids are actually picking up the cigarette butts. They put on,
From
they-
the Leverett
From,
kids.
we've had 5 or 6 schools certified, and they put on gloves and they pick up and they count and document how many cigarette butts.
But it shouldn't be, I mean, that's the thing.
No, it should not be.
Smoking on Leverett campus. If it's not smoking on the college campus, why would it be allowed on a elementary campus? You know, elementary school, but, maybe I could ask them, give the suggestion to them as to, you know, maybe the school could step up and say, hey, you know, we need enforcement for this. Because why would we want to have people smoking in front of our schools anyway? For little kids, you know, but, I can look into it.
Okay.
What is your name?
Cindy Cope.
But you're not gonna be here is what I understand. Or-
Well,
She's on the other.
I can find her.
Okay.
I will give you my card. I'm on like 1,000 committees, and, you know.
She's not hard to find.
Tom?
Yeah, Sue, I have a question for you. Is the Arkansas Forestry Commission helping support your urban wildland interface safety projects?
Well, we just started, so
Oh, it's a city
I'm here,
initiated.
I mean, I'm here at this
Program.
committee the first time.
Yep, this is a brand new program, and it's something that I think was jointly pursued by the previous urban forester and the fire department. And I think the fire department desired to be part of this Firewise program, and it has certain obligations you have to make. And part of it is to have a committee, so it was a natural fit to kind of partner with the Urban Forestry Advisory Board to serve as that committee. So we're still kind of learning.
Yeah. In Texas anyway, since there was so much sprawl around the urban areas, the urban wildland interface was a big problem for fire, and including the county that we recently left, Bastrop County, which had the 35,000 acre burn in September. So I was just wondering if, I know the Forestry Commission, you know, is always broke and they're getting broker every year, but it seems like in northwest Arkansas, of all parts of Arkansas, that this would be a place where they would be able to, you know, dispense some wisdom and possibly expertise, and even, I'm not even talking about funding, of course, but sponsorship would be, helpful. So just checking. Thank you.
Well, and I think that's why Greg, the former urban forestry director,
Very helpful.
he actually, the Firewise is actually a community volunteer basis. So they go into a community, they get the volunteer, you know, the citizens who want to participate, and they do like a little project to make awareness, education, and then that maybe do some mulching or whatever it is that their project is. It was falling behind. The last one we did, I mean, this is how old this was. We're talking about Autumn Fest. Okay, that was a couple of years ago. So we no longer have Autumn Fest. So that's when the last time the city actually kind of was involved in an actual event where the citizens were volunteering. So Greg kind of wanted to make it a permanent thing so that we can do something. But that's all I heard. I came to one meeting, and then he wrote it, and then he left. So it was like that quick, you know. So I was invited, instructed by my bosses to come. They didn't give me any instruction. I thought you guys were waiting on me, and I was sorry about last week. I was here. I sat right here, waited, where were we?
Oh, we were on
You're-
the
yeah.
farm.
And, I told them, I said,
And you
I
didn't tell us,
came, and they.
and you
they're
didn't tell
not-
us you were coming,
And,
did you?
no, well, I didn't know I was supposed to announce either, so please excuse me for my informality of what I know, but.
We're glad you're here.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah, well, and I am too, and this sounds like it's gonna be very interesting to do, and I'd be more than happy to, be part of whatever we decide to do, so. So that's why we're hoping, this was a project that I kinda got going, but I thought it was a pretty good project, that it can always go. I haven't even completed a year yet of it, but our funds and code compliance funds kind of ran out. We had a lot of overtime this year because of all the fires that we have had. So they look at me, that's my public ed, they go down the list. Oh, she's got a little money? No, so.
Okay, so what do you think we should do in regard to this meeting, Allison? That we should set a particular time twice a year to meet with them and organize some kind of event? Is that the plan?
I think that would be a good start, yeah. And I don't know that we have to set the months right now. It may be
Wait
as
till
a,
next.
it may be in conjunction that's something that Sue already has going that's a better time to get volunteers. I'm not certain at this point.
Okay, maybe January or so, when we have all our members on board that are gonna be with us next year, we can talk a little bit more about what we're gonna do on that subject. Is there any further business before us tonight?
I have one little thing. We have some certificates for people who are completing their terms.
We had backpacks.
And we have backpack, little goodie bags. So I'd like to at least give out their certificates for people as an official thank you for your dedication to the city. And we have one for Cindy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And these are signed by Connie, our Parks Director, and Lois. Oh, and Betty, that's too. But hopefully we'll see you again.
Yes, yes, keep our fingers crossed.
Yes, and we do have one for James, but he's not here, so we will get that to him and make sure that he knows that everyone's time and dedication to the city is very much appreciated, and we couldn't do a lot of things we do without our volunteer board, so.
Thank you. You read James's email why he can't be here much anymore.
Yes.
He's working too many hours, too late.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And we have snacks.
Right. Do I hear a motion that we adjourn?
I so move.
Anybody second that? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Aubrey, you wanted to say something?
May I mention one thing that Urban Forest probably has looked at, and Environmental Action Committee is looking at it. There's an effort by one developer to mitigate only and remove the existing trees out by the interstate. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well,
We've already
talked about
discussed
yeah.
that.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
good.
covered.
I'm sorry, I was late, but I have pictures of that site.
Good.
About 100 or so of them.
Good.
Right. A lot.
We had a motion and a second. Any discussion about whether we should adjourn? And all in favor?
Lois is gonna discuss it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Okay, so I guess we will be in our adjourn.